Are you temporarily short of cash and you need to keep the bills paid? Or maybe you just need a little extra until your tax refund comes in. I have the answer for you. Money Max Title Pawn. With a clear title to your car, you can be in and out of Money Max in a matter of minutes. And no credit check ever. Money Max Title Pawn, 2293 North Elm Street in Commerce.
Welcome back to Raceweek Illustrated Garage Talk. There are few people that race fans directly connect to at the racetrack quite like a race announcer. With their voices constantly feeding information to the fans, the race announcers quickly become fast friends not only with those watching from the stands, but also with the drivers in the pits. Charles Head has been one of those friendly voices for many years now, calling races at tracks like Lanier National Speedway, Atlanta Motor Speedway, Peach State Speedway, Georgia International Speedway, which of course is now Gresham Motorsports Park, and Toccoa Speedway. Head has also reached into fans' homes week after week with his long-running Champ Racing radio show. This week we sat down with Charles to talk about racing and his career in our Pit Road Spotlight. Well, Charles, I know that you got started announcing in 1974. What made you decide to get into this sport?
Well, Brandon, is kind of an odd situation. I grew up as a race fan. Literally, I was a fanatic. I was at the racetrack every time. My parents carried me from the time I was a little boy. It is rumored that I went there prior to being born, actually, to Toccoa Speedway. And I was hanging out on a light pole in the pits, always, every Saturday night, watching my old favorites like Buck Simmons and Bud Lunsford and Tootle STs and the great old names of racing right around. Well, I decided to start working at a radio station just so I could get press passes so I could get in the races free. Okay, this is in 1970. I was working at a radio station in 1974, still going to the races, had built my own race car at that time and was driving a race car, very poorly I might add, at Toccoa Speedway. That was not cut out for that. And the gentleman who was announcing the races worked with me at the radio station. He had a fire in his home, and his baby was severely injured and subsequently died. So they asked me to fill in for him while he was with his child in Eggleston and throughout the remaining weeks. And I started announcing in 1974 and loved it, and they loved me, and I found out I could make $50 a night instead of losing $200 a night as a race car driver. So that's the way it started.
So you got started at Toccoa. Where are some of the other places that you called over the years?
Oh my goodness. I was trying to think of that the other day, and I think about 12 or 14 different states and many racetracks in those states that I've announced at over the years. So from St. Augustine, Florida, DeLand, Florida, at Volusia County, all the way to, let's see, I don't know how far north I've gone. In Virginia, I've announced there. I've announced in Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, of course, many racetracks in Georgia. So I've had a lot of experience in racing and just been thrilled to meet some great and wonderful drivers and wonderful fans.
Now, speaking of the fans, at a racetrack, it's very easy for the fans to you are their friend. I mean, you're their racing buddy. You're telling them what's going on and who's where, and that starts a very special relationship between the fans and the announcer, doesn't it?
It does, and I find out many times I will be at Walmart, and I don't care if I'm at Walmart in Toccoa or Walmart in Commerce or Walmart in Gainesville or Walmart in Sonoya, wherever I am. If I'm at Walmart, people will walk up and start talking racing to me. They know me, but I don't know them, and that's always a sad thing when I can't call them by name. I feel like I want to and I ought to, but a lot more people know me than I know them. You know how that is, being in the media.
Absolutely. Now, who has influenced you over the years?
Well, the main influence that I had was Jimmy Mosteller. I grew up listening to Mosteller announcing at Toccoa, and he was my main influence. There are very few people, I think, when they're sitting in the grandstand, they don't want to be the guy racing the car. They want to be the guy in the tower talking. But I was one of those guys. I wanted to be the guy talking. So that's he was my main influence that started me in that.
Now, over the last several years, you have become known not only for a voice at the racetrack, but a voice on the radio with the Champ Show. Now, when and how did the Champ Show get started?
Champ Show got started. I was working at a local radio station in Toccoa. It was WZLI at that time, 100,000 watt, big radio station as far as power is concerned. They needed an extra person to help out with some local track reporting because they were doing NASCAR tracks. Linda Sharp was doing, of course, Road Atlanta and Atlanta Dragway. Jim Casey was with us, and Casey was covering all the NASCAR races. None of them wanted to go to the local tracks and be in the dirt. So they said, here, Charles, if you will take care of this, you can have a 5-minute segment on the show. So I did. They both went on to bigger and better things and left me with the show. It was called Raceweek at that time, and I was allowed to name it anything I wanted to. And I started trying to put together various acronyms to come up with something that would kind of be cool. And I came up with Charles Head's American Motorsports Program, which is the Champ Show. We have long since dropped Charles Head's American Motorsports Program, but the Champ Show has stood out, and I think many people are familiar with the Champ Show and that name.
I can still remember seeing you at Georgia International Speedway in the late '80s wearing the Champ Show shirt that had it spelled out on the back.
Right.
You knew how to market it. You knew how to brand it.
I have a wife who's an interior designer, and she's also been a great seamstress over the years, and she has made my announcing outfits for me. And of course, working for Bud and Laquita Lunsford at Lanier, Laquita had an embroidery shop, so we all put our heads together and they created this wonderful uniform for me. And I'd like to thank the folks at Ream for providing all of these nice things for me now. That has been a great sponsorship. We are now the Ream Champ Show, and thanks to all of the folks at Ream and for their participation and sponsorship of our program.
I'm glad you could get your plugs in there.
Yeah, why not?
We do what we can to help. And now, all of the tracks that you've covered through all of the years, do you have a favorite?
I guess my favorite track as far as dirt is concerned would have to be Toccoa. I spent so many years there. My formative years, I've spent many years at other tracks. I've announced at Hartwell and Livonia and other tracks that were dirt tracks not right in the local area, but I've announced at other local tracks, Cherokee Speedway in Gaffney and tracks like that. But I think Toccoa would have to be my favorite. I have two local favorites in the asphalt realm, both for different reasons. Gresham, which used to be Peach State, and prior to that was Georgia International, and Lanier. Spent a lot of years at both of those racetracks announcing. And when you look in South Carolina, I spent a lot of years announcing on Friday nights at Anderson with the Porter family, and just love that little racetrack too. So it's almost like every track I go to, I find a reason to love that racetrack. I can't, it's hard to separate a favorite from an also ran, because in some way they're all my favorites.
That's great. Now, all the things that you've seen over the years between broadcasting and being an announcer, have you got any real favorite memories, just something when you're telling a story that just pops into your mind ahead of everything else?
A couple of them. I announced in Atlanta for 12 years for NASCAR and Sprint Cup Series racing. And of course, I did the Busch races and nationwide races, ARCA races, IndyCar races, anything that moved at Atlanta. I was there for the announcing for 12 years. And one of my favorites involves Tony Stewart. Tony came up to me one day. As always, Tony Stewart is a very hands-on, literally a hands-on person. And I would be sitting there trying to do the driver introductions, and I'd be holding my script, and Stewart would stick his wet finger in my ear or do something more dastardly than that to me to try to break me up while I was doing the things, and just sit over there and laugh like crazy. Another very special memory I have is with Dale Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip, Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Darrell Waltrip one day. And I'm reading my my intro, and Earnhardt pulls my script out of my hands, and he says, "Let's see how far you can go without having your script in your hand." And we're sitting there, and I'm supposed to introduce the next driver, and I have no clue who it is, and it's getting to be an uncomfortable silence, and he finally hands me my script back. But those are memories that I really enjoy and have had for a long time, and will continue to have those great memories of Dale Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip. And Waltrip, of course, made the comment, "That boy's pretty good, ain't he?" So that's a great memory to have, too.
Now, going hand in hand with that, whether it's at a short track or at Atlanta, when you see the cars lined up, who was somebody that you always loved seeing out there on the racetrack?
You always knew that you were going to have a fast race when Joe Nemechek was in the front of the pack. Joe Nemechek, especially in Busch racing or nationwide racing. Not so much in Cup, but Joe Nemechek always had a fast car, and you knew you were going to have a fast, blistering race when Joe Nemechek was at the forefront. Now, that's in the NASCAR world. Now, when you get into the dirt track world or the asphalt local racing, anytime there was a Wingo in the field, you knew there was going to be some excitement. And you knew that when two drivers, any two particular drivers, happened to get close to each other, if they had a history, And if you're there every week, you know the history. You knew there was going to be some fireworks. I remember a period of time when Deborah Brown, who always ran the high line at Lanier, and Wayne Willard had a duel going on. They had this feud. I don't think it was against them personally, but they had this feud on the racetrack. And they were getting together, and they were tearing up more cars every week. One of them would put the other in the wall, just in hard racing, not intentional. And James Garrison at Garrison Racing Equipment told me that it was great for him. He sold more race car parts during that period of time than any time else. So that was a good one.
I remember those battles very well. Charles, you've been doing this since 1974. You've had a great career. Where do you want to be in 5 years?
Exactly where I'm at right now. I love laying my head on my pillow on Saturday nights, teaching my Sunday school class on Sunday morning. I've had offers to go travel and do other series, and there's just something about the local fans. I've done all that. I've been as high as you can go in the announcing realm, and I'm very, very pleased to be the track announcer at Toccoa Speedway.
And you can hear Charles Head each week on his ever-popular Ream Champ Show, which is carried every Thursday night at 8 o'clock on WCON FM 99.3 in Cornelia, Georgia. We'll be right back.